So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversations. I'm Jeff Rabinowitz, and I am with Diane Delano. We're bringing voices from all sides to challenge assumptions, bridge divides, and build a better understanding of today's biggest issues. Diane is the founder and owner of Wild Horse Rescue out in Webster, Florida. We can see that beautiful horse in the background. There's Diane. It looks amazing out there. And that's Tonka, right?
Yes, it is. That's Tatanka. He is a Mustang.
Tatanka.
Yep. He's a Mustang from Wyoming, from an area called the Salt Wells Herd Management Area. And he is 23 years old.
Ooh. Is
He's
that
one of my,
old for a horse?
no, not really. We're going to say no, but yeah, they can live to about 30, 40. I have a horse that's 36 on the property, and we have quite a few horses that are 27, 28, 30. Now, those really are not really riding anymore. So, yes, he's only got a few years left of riding,
And
and then he'll be retired.
that's the one you're currently enjoying riding, right? That's your riding horse, you said?
Yes, it is. I've had him since he was 14 months old. So,
Wow.
he's been with me a long time. And he's from the Wyoming herd area. It's called the checkerboard area. And that's where you have salt wells, adobe, and two other management areas that are like in four corners. And the middle of that area is 50 miles wide, 150 miles long, 1 acre plots of land that were sold for the railroad company back in the day when the railroads were going across America. That is cattlemen's land. Ever since the 1940s, most of that checkerboard was bought by our cattle people, and they don't want our horses crossing their land. So there's a big debate right now about zeroing out some of those herds because the cattlemen don't want the horses going from Adobe to Salt Wells or to Divide Basin. There's four herd management areas there that at one time used to be free roaming land. So that's actually one of the problems they're working on right now. There's a big debate on that.
So when you say zeroing out, what is zero? I mean, I have a feeling what
That
it
means
means, but
that means that means the Bureau of Land Management will go and round up every single horse in that region, and it'll no longer be a herd management area. It'll become a AML, which is there'll be no animals on it. It'll still
oh,
be Bureau of Land Management land. It just will not allow horses on it. And
and
that's a shame because a lot of these horses, you have the curlies, which is a unique breed of horse. A lot of the horses in this region are actually from World War I when they let loose a lot of the military horses out into the wild herds. Because you got to figure back in the 1900s, after World War I, there wasn't all these highways. You didn't have fencing. You still had uh, where cattlemen roamed their cattle down to summer area and winter grounds. And so the animals could just travel. Now, today, of course, we have highways and cities and towns, and everything is fenced. So this herd management area has been there for hundreds of years, the Mustangs, but then also was introduced some of the military stock. So you have some standard bred mixed in with these Mustangs
and then
of
if
that
that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
of that herd management area.
Yeah. And then if, go ahead, Diane, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So the horses all over the United States, we have 10 Western states that have the wild horses on them. And certain herd management areas have different breeds of horses mixed in because in Idaho, they were doing logging. So in the Idaho area, you actually have Belgium draft horse mixed in with some of the Mustangs. You had wagon horses. You had Friesians in the California area. You had thoroughbreds. You have all these different breeds of Mustangs that have, when we do DNA on these horses, it's pretty unique because you have Spanish blood, you have uh what was that like Fox Walker horses, Tennessee Walkers. You have all these different breeds in these horses. They're just big mutts out there, which is wonderful.
Yeah. So if this comes down to it, if they have to clear this land, if they say they have to clear this land, if they have to suddenly they have this issue with the horses, just like you said, it's fenced, there's roads, there's what happens to the horses? Is there enough rescues in the air? Is it like I know you were just traveling to Cocoa Beach the other day and that was a full day event. I mean, what would it take to get out to Wyoming and be a part of the
Okay, no,
rescue?
it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. These belong to our U.S. government, to the Bureau of Land Management. They are overseers of the American wild horses on all 10 Western states. So they have the say so what happens. So when they zero out those horses, ever since 2004, Senator Burns passed a bill that a lot of people didn't know that was getting passed. And that bill said that the government has the right to sell the horses. So the horses can be sold. When those horses are sold for $1, $10, or $25, most of those horses are sold for slaughter. Now, they don't sell them across the border for slaughter, they sell them to people that do that because the Bureau does not take and send them to Mexico or Canada, but they do allow people that are slaughter buyers to purchase those horses. So, right now, our American wild horses are going to become extinct. We are on the bridge of becoming extinct. For some reason, the Bureau of Land Management thinks that there should only be 27,000 wild horses completely on all 10 Western states. So right now we have about 80,000 of them in holding pens since the '04 change. They said, let's round them up and let's put them in holding facilities and we'll feed them in holding facilities, or we will take the horses and let the cattle people lease the land for their cows, and we'll pay the cattle people a fee to put the horses on their land. So that's called long-term holding facilities, and it like the Pioneer Woman has one. She has, I think, 500 Mustangs running on her land. She makes about $1 million a year. She's a 5-year contract, so you get $5 million for having Mustangs on your land, while your cattle get to go on Bureau land. So the cattle ratio, say there's 100,000 cattle and there's 5,000 horses out on the land. And it's really been a terrible mismanagement of our wild horses. The roundups are brutal. 1956, it was airplanes used to round them up. And 1959, they passed the law said you couldn't round them up with airplanes because it was brutal. So the government in 1971, when they took over the wild horses, they used helicopters. And helicopters can be used humanely if you slow it down. But if you run the horses 5 miles at fast gallops over hot temperatures or cold temperatures, it's very damaging to them. So the Bureau of Land Management's Adopt a Horse program was set up, wonderful idea, but it's kind of varied from that. I've been involved for 34 years. And I used to get Mustangs 6 weeks from the range, which was wonderful. You got the horses in, just like Tatanka back here. When he came in, he was from that old group of horses, and they had the wisdom of the range because they had the older horses out there, and the roundups weren't so massive. Today, the roundups are so massive that they're constantly rounding them up, and then they're taking the older horses off the range. They're also taking the babies from their mothers, and then they're mixing horses and putting them back out in these herd management areas. There's other organizations that are trying to encourage birth control that is reversible on some of the mares to try to slow down the birth rate. And they could do that. That would help a little bit. But the biggest thing would be stop massive roundup, leave the older horses out on the range. Also, leave the mares with their babies for the first 2 years because it's really important that a colt or filly is taught by its mother and its herd. There's social skills that are really important in these horses, just like humans have. And it does make a difference on the wild horses, how to handle with them. Today, I find some of the wild horses a lot harder to work with because they don't have the confidence that their herd would have taught them. They also don't have boundaries. A herd teaches them to stay within a parameter of boundaries. So they get corrected. They also get nurtured. They get to play with their herd mates. And when you take them too young and put babies with babies and then adopt them out, they don't get that. Just like puppies. If you take a puppy too young, they want puppies to stay with their puppy mates until they're 8 weeks, 12 weeks, so that the puppies can have good social skills.
Is there any hope of a solution other than what, it
Yeah,
seems to me
there
like,
is. There
yeah,
is. There's lots of hope if they would just listen to the people that really know. Like, for instance, right now, they're wanting to go into Wyoming and they say that there's all these Mustangs they're going to round up. They're going to round up, you know, 18,000 Mustangs. Okay, in 22 to 23, we had some really horrible winters out in Wyoming. I don't know if you remember. They lost a lot of the pronghorns. It was a horrible snow, really deep, really cold, and Wyoming gets super windy. I mean, they could have 100-mile-an-hour winds in the snow time. They have 60-mile-an-hour winds in the regular time. So a lot of the horses disappeared. There are people like Carol Walker. She has a podcast about wild horses, and she's hands on. She's out there. She's out monitoring the wild horses. Laura Lee is another one. There are these people that photograph them and monitor them. And the wild horses, there's not as many as what they're claiming that are out there. So we do need to have an investigation of the Bureau of Land Management on who is counting the horses. How are they counting the horses? How do they know what herd management areas are? How many horses are there versus cattle? We're the taxpayers. We want to see the horses on the land. They deserve to be on the land. If you're going to put 100,000 cows and you only have 5,000 horses, how is it that the horses are ruining the land? Well, they say, oh, the cows are only there 5 months of the year. Yeah, the cows are there for the whole entire spring and summer, and the horses are out there when it's covered in snow in the winter. So, how is the horses ruining the land? So, money, unfortunately, makes rules and laws. These horses deserve to be in North America. The horse originated in North America and then it went over the Bering Straits. A lot of people don't realize that at one time we had a 100-mile wide land strip that went from Alaska to Russia, and people traded over that land. The Native American Indians of Northern America and Canada traded with China horses back in the day. They traded the Appaloosa horse, which I have an Appaloosa here, but she walked away. Smoochie is an Oregon Appaloosa. She comes from that lineage of the Nez Perce Native American people here in North America, crossbred Appaloosas. And they showed Lewis and Clark in the 1700s how they had been castrating and crossbreeding what they wanted to get that spotted, beautiful Appaloosa color. And then China, they traded with China, and China had the spotted horses. So if you look at old uh, drawings and stuff about China, you'll see the Appaloosa horses there. So horses never really left North America. So if horses are a species like the buffalo, the wolf, the badger, all those North American animals, then they deserve to be protected. If they were a protective animal, they would be on the endangered list right now with how many are in the wild. The holding pens, they castrate everything. So there's no breeding, of course, going on in the holding pens. Another problem was the incentive program, I believe it was 2017. They came up with first time adopters get $1,000 to adopt a horse for $125. Um, you can go on any of these auction houses in Texas, Louisiana, along the border, and it's full of Mustangs that are turned in after the people got their $1,000. So I had three of them come in here a year and a half ago. They had been titled 1 week from the government's title program, and the people received their money, and they dropped off the horses and sold them at auction and received money for them. So right now that's a big problem, and that needs to be reversed. That money that they're giving to people could turn around into training these horses. They're very successful in the prison programs with training mustangs. You have Wyoming, uh, Riverton prison, you have Hutchinson in Kansas. Colorado's, I don't think is running. You have a Nevada one. They have some very excellent prison programs working with the American Mustang. Those prisoners train those horses for Border Patrol, is all Mustang now. Also, our police is using Mustang. I talked to them about 2 months ago. They were training 5 horses for the Chicago Police Department, and they were training 5 horses for a Native American Indian Police Department. I am taking one of my Mustangs on Sunday to Orange County, Orlando Sheriff Mounted Unit, and I'm donating a 7-year-old Mustang to their program for a police horse. So there's a lot of ways that you could spend that money better than giving it to people that are going to turn around and drop them off for slaughter. Let these horses get trained. Also, leave more horses on the range. Manage the horses better. Leave the old horses out there. That's the wisdom of any society. Here in America, same thing. Your old people have wisdom and should be voiced. I live in the villages, so I live in Sumter County, and 90% of my people that come out here are over 55, 60, 70, 80 years old. And it's amazing to listen to their stories, their life, and they love being around the horses. So, in the wild horses, that older horse does teach wisdom to the younger horses.
And that's the way society should be, like you said, in every level. I mean, a lot of people in the villages could really, and a lot of, not just in the villages, let me rephrase that. A lot of elderly people could really have something to offer our younger people in K through 12 education system, just like your program. I think you clove a leaf into the K through 12 education system at times. And it just seems like every time, and I've only been doing this podcast for a year, but I've been whatever you want to call it, not a political activist by any means, but just an interested person. I get so frustrated that there's so many better ways to do things, and we seem to always pick the worst ways to do things.
I
And
I agree.
and it's like you said, I mean, you've got this roundup. You can do it semi-effectively by slowing down the helicopters, but I'm sure the contract goes out to any helicopter company, and they're just gonna keep the helicopters going. And like you said, those horses are going to run that 5 or 7 miles at full speed, which is basically some of them could collapse right there during the trip and get run over or trip or,
Right.
and get run over by another horse. And why I just never understand, no matter who I speak to, why we keep going down these roads or these rabbit holes that are just so destructive. You know,
It, it's so true. In 2002, April issue of Western Horseman, Temple Grandin. Do you know who Temple Grandin is? She's a PhD. She's a doctor with autism.
no, I didn't.
Temple Grandin uh, did a lot of studies for the USDA, like how to handle cattle. So they made ways that cattle can be less stressed. She went into pig farms, how to pigs should be set up. So she does, and she tries to make better ways for animals to adapt to the environment that people have put them into. So she did a study in 2002 at Rock Springs, Wyoming. She let the Bureau of Land Management use their helicopters contractor, and they rounded up the horses. And she only observed. So she observed in there how many horses ran into the gate, what was the speed of the horses coming in, how many horses got ran over, how many horses kicked, how many horses fell over, how many horses reared, all these things. And it was all across the board with it. So then 2 weeks later, she had an independent helicopter that she had, and they brought the horses in at a walk and a trot, and she had zero all across. So she proved to them that you can slow it down and have less injuries to these animals. And then the reason they don't want to do that is because that helicopter pilot, say you get 100 horses doing it that way. Well, hell, I can run in 200 or 300 horses. I can run in double to triple the number in that day. So it's about money. So that's the bottom line. How much money can I make getting these horses in? Because they are not considered something of value. When you sell these horses for $25 or $125, it costs probably $1,800 to round that horse up per horse, and you're going to sell that horse at that price. And then they're stockpiled and they're fed. It's just, it's almost, and you hate to compare it like this, but I'm going to tell you, it's almost like a POW, a Nazi camp, or a camp where these are actually prisoners. If you go and look at wild horses and look at them in the wild, I have beautiful photos in my education center. You see the life in their eyes. Okay, they're living life like they should. I have a board in there in my education full of photographs of the horses that I rescue. Now, I'm getting the horses after people have them here in Florida because we don't have wild horses running loose. So I'm getting them after they've been adopted. So much neglect is done to these animals, such horrifying neglect. And you will see pictures of empty souls in their eyes. So I have two Mustangs coming in this week, and I had two Mustangs, three Mustangs come in since December. We adopt out Mustangs that are adoptable, and we keep some here that are sanctuaried. That means they're just not going to adapt. Some of them have post traumatic stress disorder that you just can't say, get over it. They really, really are scared to death. A lot of them will come out of it if you show them fairness and you gentle them. You cannot bully them. Nobody likes to be bullied. Nobody likes to be hurt to learn something. And I was part of a movement back in 2000 to 2005. And it was Willis Lamb out of Nevada called Least Resistant Training Concepts, and the Bureau of Land Management did these wild horse workshops. I wish they'd bring them back. They were incredible. You worked for 5 days with trainers, and people came from all over America, and we showed methods on gentling these horses, not breaking these horses, not fixing them fast, not roping them and demanding on them, but gentling them. And if you gentle these horses so that they trust, I'm going to tell you, they give 110. They are amazing animals. They're amazing animals to use with therapy. They connect to people in a way that is incredible. I'm an international program since 2012. I have people come from all over the world. I have quite a few testimonies in my education building there for people to read how these horses have touched the hearts of these people and brought healing to them. And that's why the horses are used for therapy and healing. But the Mustang, even so more, is so connected to humans when they are not traumatized beyond help.
You know, when you say that, it gives me like just like I said, I'm always trying to find solutions or try to find understandings. Imagine, just imagine. So I'm gonna go into a bit of a sidebar here. I recently I stopped at a Motel 6 out in Osceola County, and that's where a school bus stops and picks up kids that live there essentially, and then go to school from there. And these kids don't imagine if we brought some of these kids to your farm or another farm and they got introduced to these programs and they got introduced to other programs. Who knows what? Like, so I'm always talking about successful living programs. This is a big part of it. Understanding this rescue, understanding the need for rescue, understanding the federal law that has just cannibalized the hopes of rescue, and
Mm-hmm.
we could the next generation could be more understanding. If I think it was Charles Koch that wrote a book from the bottom up, and he talks about how we could implement so much of this stuff and do so much good, but there always seems to be this overpowering federal burden, federal policy that just mandates we do things in this massive way, and we could get things done in a massive way without their
Right.
destructive approach. It's
Mm-hmm.
just they assume their destructive approach is the way to go about it, and that's how you get it done.
Right.
And I, it's just, I know these horses are suffering. I go to the rescues for dogs, and I see 100 dogs I want to adopt,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't even have funding for food. I mean, you bring them food and blank. I bring them food and blankets when I have it, and I just don't understand where our priorities are anymore. It's like you said, I understand the gentrification in Wyoming. There's fences, there's roads, there's now shopping centers, probably for all I know. And so suddenly these horses, imagine if a horse were to walk through a Walmart parking lot, it would be an issue, right? But it's not that big an issue. It can be resolved in an effective way. But the way they choose to resolve it is just horrifying.
I agree. We do the reading program with first grade with Orange County deputies. That's where I was yesterday. For the month of February, every Tuesday and Thursday of that month, we go to the deputies' farm over on East Orlando, and the schools come to us. It is such a wonderful program. They're first graders. Okay, I bring a pony. His name is Robert for this go around because the book that we're using is Robert the Rose Horse, which is a Dr. Seuss book about a horse that becomes a police officer. And so his name is really Tonk, but whatever book we're using, he becomes that character. And it is so good for these children to be exposed to kindness, taking care of animals, learning to trust and believe in our deputies, our sheriff. They volunteer their time. They go to the school with their horse first, and then the kids come there, and we have five areas that the kids go in rotation. You break up per class, and you have a table that shows about feeding horses. So the kids can feel the hay and the grain and the salt lick and the stuff that the deputies feed their horses. And then the next table is grooming. The next table is farrier. And the next table is the tack, the bridle, the saddle, the girth. And then I'm the last place, and I have the little pony there, and the kids get to pet the pony and feel his mane and his body and his tail. And I bring a horsehair brush that's made out of mane. You should see those kids love feeling the horsehair brush. They touch it and their eyes just lighten up. Our schools should have where these kids are doing gardening. I wish we had the seniors able to go over there and read to the kids. They had where the drag queens were reading to the kids. Um, and I'm not picking on drag queens or anybody. I'm just saying they had them coming to read to the children. Why are we not having our seniors tell their life stories, talk to these children, read to them? Now, of course, make sure these people are all okay to be able to do that. But our children can learn so much from our seniors and not sit in school 5 days a week and sit in a chair and try to only learn art, dance, music, play. All of that is so important. Diet is so important. What we feed our kids. I'm so glad that we're looking into that. I'm so glad that now we have enough people that have woke up to the fact that America's diet is terrible. I had two ladies here from Canada earlier this year, and they could not believe the difference in taste in like Doritos and our products, because our products are so full of other stuff that other countries do not have that in it. Our cancer rate our disease rate is sky high here in America. And even with animals, it is so hard for me. I read labels on everything because I don't want to give my dogs cancer. I have 20 dogs here at our rescue right currently. We have 50 horses. I read what's in products for them. I read what's in products for me. I will not take anything now with the dyes in it. I can hardly buy my grandkids candy. Okay, I can't buy them any kind of like chewable candy because everything is full of dyes. So, yes, our whole way of living, the way we treat our animals and the way you treat your elderly says a lot about a society. And I'm going to tell you, these dogs, I've got three of them here. I don't know if you can see. Look,
They're adorable.
I got three of them hovered around me, and here comes another one. So, and these dogs are all rescue dogs that came in, and it's like a dog park out here every day for them. But we understand this species, and it's important that these dogs also have pack mentality because they play with each other, they correct each other, um, they get along with each other, and that is a beautiful thing. And I feel so bad for so many shelters, like you said. A lot of shelters are underfunded. They don't have the room like I have here at 42 acres. I do have a couple dogs in kennels right now. I have two dogs that had surgery. They're both in kennels. And I have a dog that is highly food aggressive towards other dogs. So that dog has to be kenneled. But if they can get along, they'll be out with these dogs. I have several dogs for adoption that are out here running on the yard, which helps them to have good social skills and good with people. But we need a lot of change. And I love seeing organizations like out there in Utah, Best Friends. They make their dog area big runs, big areas for these dogs to get around. Um, Orange County in Orlando is, I think they get like 60 dogs a day. Do you know how heartbreaking that is? It is so heartbreaking. I can't even go into a shelter and walk by pen after pen after pen and see these animals. So my focus has to stay here at this ranch, trying to do the best that we can do, bringing in funds for hay, for veterinarian care, for rescuing of these animals. And I have to stay focused on that because you could really become so weighed down if you run around trying to do everything. I would love to talk more at Washington, D.C. I would love to talk more about the wild horses and bring it to people's attention. But this center does take up my time. And then we do other stuff like the reading program, the international program. We have groups come out here tomorrow night, Saturday night. We have wild horses, wild women, and wine. So that's a
I saw that on your
fundraiser.
website.
Um, that I came up with that event when we moved here to the villages. I said, "Oh, come on, we got to do something like this." So men, of course, are invited. It's not just women. It just sounds cooler that way. And that's a 3 hour event. So we do that to try to bring funds in because I am. My father was a World War II veteran. I was raised in the 60s and the 70s as a kid. Okay, you made do with what you had. You made it work. You reuse things. You don't waste. And that's how I was brought up from my father. And so it's hard for me. I don't want to beg for money. I'm not going to tell you that if you don't give me money, this dog right here, we're not going to get him his surgery. We'll get him his surgery. We might have to skimp here and there. We might have, I drive a 2000, my truck's over there. It's an F-350 2000. It's got almost 400,000 miles on it. Do I need a new truck? Yeah, I do. Am I going to worry about it today? No. We keep it maintained, we keep it running. When one day, God giving, bless us, we'll get another vehicle. But for right now, that truck, we keep it running. So my money has to be stretched on what we do here at the center. Foremost is the care of these animals is the first priority. And then we got other stuff. I've got tractors, I've got trailers, I've got stuff that we have to maintain. So we try to do fundraisers. We also, matching funds help us greatly. So somebody that might work at Walmart or at a credit union, sometimes they do matching funds. So that person gives $20 and they give $20. That helps. Foundations are some of our kindest to us. Foundations, private foundations that care for our cause of helping to save the American wild horse as well as other animals. We have um, a couple goats that ended up here. We have some chickens, which right now is really good because my volunteers love getting eggs. So right now, my pay to my volunteers are chicken eggs, which is way valuable. I asked my worker the other day, I said, "Hey, do you want a $12 sandwich?" He looked at me. I said, "Yeah, two eggs on bread." So right now,
That's
with all.
that's incredible that creative mind is there because it's true. It's like you got the chickens now and you got eggs and you're like, oh, I got some commodity here. I can get some more volunteers in here.
I
And
do.
then I just think we need to, I love the idea of getting more schools out there. It was a thing. Warren Buffett said the reason there's such a growing divide between rich and poor is because 300 years ago everybody was a farmer, and today life has gotten so complex that to succeed, no matter how you succeed, whether you become an engineer or a brain surgeon, you need the core values that we used to have in the school system. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got away from the BOCES, we've got away from all the vocational training programs. They talk about how they have a fidgeting corner in some rooms, in some school classrooms, for kids that fidget. Maybe those kids that fidget need to be out at your farm 2 days a week rather than in some fidgeting corner that essentially says they're not disturbing the other kids, so let them fidget all they want. I mean, we're throwing people aside just as fast as we're throwing horses aside. And we've got to really rethink all that. And that's one of the things I try to do. I don't have the answers. I reach out to people like you who's not only has the answers, who's doing it. 40-acre rescue and right nearby or in the vicinity of the villages, right? So you're living in the villages. There's all these elderly people that could be contributing to our classrooms who otherwise may be just bored during the day or maybe have one bingo event during the week or and why can't we ever put this puzzle together and coordinate all these great thoughts and all these great efforts? And I guess I want to be a part of that when I talk to people. I also want to learn more for myself, but I mean, the return on investment, if we invest in our children in a big way in our education system, because we're in a time where a lot of things are changing, whether I agree with them or not, whether they keep pointing out that what they're taking away is just wasteful spending. Well, that's great. Get rid of the wasteful spending. But how are we going to reallocate that money? Are we just going to return it to the taxpayers or are we going to spend it on our education system? That's my biggest focus. And if we spent it on the education system, how would we get these programs expanded your way and other ways like this?
Right. Absolutely. Because I'll tell you what, it's not all about testing. Okay. These schools have just focused so much on testing, 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 study and testing, making these kids just flooded with that. Teaching people hands on, outside, other things is where it's at. Children in some countries don't even get graded to the age the fourth grade. Okay, children in first, second, and third grade should be learning a lot of other skills. Unfortunately, so many families are, you know, one parent or both parents having to work, or it's really sad because the family unit is no longer what it was at one time. At one time, I was raised with my grandfather living with us. Okay, my grandmother had already passed. And the reason is that you took in your elderly and they stayed and they were part of the family. I wanted to create many years ago, I was trying to get 600 acres back in 2014 and I didn't. I tried to get 300 acres in 2019 and I didn't. So I ended up with 42 acres. I feel blessed, but it wasn't my exact plan. I wanted to build this like a quadplex, 4 cabins with walkways connecting, with a center area with like plexiglass for light to come through, with gardening. And I wanted my mom and dad to live in one. I wanted Mr. Bob. I wanted Mary Ann. I wanted our elderly friends and people that were connected to the center that love horses to have a little area. And they could, like Marianne used to love baking. She could have baked cookies and products for the volunteer program. My father loved gardening. Mr. Bob loved to sit with the horses with a walker. He sat for years. He's 94 now. He sat for 10 years volunteering and living on my property on and off. And he would sit with the wild horses. So when people think of wild horses like this fire breathing animal that's going to attack you, no, they are a afraid soul who is so gentle and can touch a 90-year-old man sitting there with hay so gently that you're not afraid that they're going to go in there and hurt them, because they're not. Horses are intuitive and read the soul and the inside of that person. And I wanted to build something like that. Marianne Simmons is out of Wellington. And if you get a chance to look her up, Marianne is a life coach. And she really wanted us to build towns and communities like that. And she thinks my idea was a great way of having your elderly have an important role still being needed. And my father passed at 94. At 93, he built me stairs to the front of my other house that I had. He was still doing what he loved to do. He was a carpenter. And having purpose for these people is so important. I just mailed a calendar 2 days ago to Amelia Klein. She's 104 years old. At 102, she came out to my rescue, and I took in her 33-year-old horse, who's 35. And I asked if Amelia is still with us. And her daughter in law said, yes, we see her every Sunday. And so I mailed her a calendar of our wild horse rescue center here. And she
Wow.
was from the circuses, the Klein Circus in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, because people don't realize that 100 years ago or 80 years ago, we did, first off, I grew up on black and white TV in the 1960s with 3 channels. So back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, circuses were entertainment. It came to the town, it was a big deal. And of course, we've gotten away from all that because right now we have so much stuff coming at us on a daily basis. Like, for example, the news. I can barely watch the news. They jump from thing to thing like it's no big deal, between people dying, murdering, bad stuff, this, that. They inundate you with so much stuff that it makes people hopeless. So we really do need to change our way of living. I would love for people, we could do reading programs outside with the kids, gardening with the kids, learning animal husbandry, how to take care of animals. I have 2 young ladies volunteering today. They're 17, they're twins. And I have Emma who works for me. And what we're doing is room service right now. I'm talking to you, so I'm not doing room service. But what I would be doing is we clean, we scrub water buckets, we give fresh water, good hay, grain, and make sure the environments that these animals is clean. Um, so it takes a village of people to take care of a society, and we need to become more villages.
You know, so I don't. I think you have met Banks Helfrich, and he's running for the U.S. Florida House of Representatives, and he talked about how in Groveland, Florida, they're starting to build smaller schools, community-based smaller schools, where the kids can ride their bikes to schools, and that's a new movement in Groveland, Florida. And imagine if we did more and more and more of that, and we also integrated our local organizations like yourself, and we integrated our elderly community to be a part of that when they get there. And we've also got buses to get those kids out to places like yours to do room service and other things like that, brushing
Mhm.
the horses, or I mean, we need to get back to basics.
Mm.
It's like you said, we're teaching to test. That's the incentive. You teach the kid to do well on the test. The kid does well on the test, and the schools get more money inadvertently. Somehow, we are teaching kids to test. The tests are based on biology, based on reading. We need life skills. We need to get back to basics. And I always say one of the things we need to do is not only teach kids to be, if a kid just doesn't have it, if he's not going to be an engineer, if he's going to be a plumber, you can make a great living doing that. And
Yeah.
also, how do you invest that great living? How do you make it? How do you make your money grow? There's a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, where he talks about there's making money and there's making money working for money and making money work for you. Kids
Yep.
need to understand both things.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and
Um, when I went to school, we had shop class. We had auto class in Titusville at Titusville High. When I went to school, I took shop class, learning how, they kept it pretty limited on what you were working with, but still learning some skills. We need to have people having common sense. That's another thing. I see my program used to be 16 and up, and then it went and I went to 18 because actually it was just because I had a lot of 16-year-olds smoking when their application said they didn't smoke cigarettes. So I couldn't keep control of that. So I said, okay, just be 18. So then I was 18 and up. But then I started having a lot of young people because that's right out of high school. And our societies around the world are even changing, where they would be having clique like atmosphere within the group, like the French not liking the German, and we don't like how that person talks. They're from Switzerland and they got a weird voice. And so I ran into that. So I am 21 and up now. So you have to be 21 to internationally come to my program because you're coming here to give of yourself to help animals. That's the primary reason you're here. It's not to learn English. Heaven forbid you learn English from me. I cuss like a pirate. Um, you definitely don't want to learn English from me. I do try to curb that, but you're here to help these animals. And that's what's the beautiful thing about moving here to the villages in Sumter County. I'm at the very end of Sumter County. Um, is that I have the people that come here want to give to make these animals' lives better. We have a little pony named Crystal that was scared to death when she came in with her daughter Topaz. And so, Crystal, the volunteers can now brush on her, take her out, walk her around for grass, and just spend time with her like a friend would. And it's been a long journey for Crystal because she was just so afraid of trusting. And trust takes time with some. And that's the same thing that we're running into with people, our kids. I have some testimonials there inside the education building of some of those women that I mentioned earlier, how we changed people's hearts. I have some very, very severely depressed young people from around the world coming here that are beautiful young people with their whole future, but they're empty inside. And we're living in a society that has everything. Okay. My father talked about an ice box because in 1925, you had a box that had ice in it. And that's where you put your milk that came on a wagon and delivered to you. My father always called the refrigerator an ice box, which was all his life. So in 100 years, we're not, that was 1925. We are 2025. In 100 years, look at how rapidly changed our society has become. Is it for the better? Some things, but not everything. Holistic care. I took a horse, we did acupuncture the other day. He's on herbs. Go back to what God gave us here on this planet. He gave us stuff. I know that for every plant that's poisonous here in this yard, there's an antidote near it. That's just how it is. You have antidotes where you have poisonous stuff. For poisonous snakes, for example, because I came from Lake Harney over in Volusia County, Mims area, and we had pygmy rattlers. So many because we were on the St. Johns Basin that we live caught them, 45 of them, I believe, and we had a snake handler come and get them because I didn't think it was fair to kill them. We moved into their property. I had 38 acres there on the St. Johns River, and I came in and cleared their property, and the snakes lived there. So we would relocate the snakes. And the thing about poisonous snakes, there is another snake that looks like them. And I don't know if you realize that. And I had to teach all my volunteers about snakes because I don't want to kill friendlies. Like a water moccasin has the, oh, what is that snake? The snake looks just like him. You have the king snake, looks like the coral snake. Um, you have snakes that look like each other. The bandit water snake looks like a water moccasin. The difference is it's not poisonous. But it camouflages itself like that. So there's so much to learn to coexist with nature. And that's something that comes back to my wild horses. Our wild horses out in the wild, I want you to know that they have one stomach. They do not have a four stomach basin like a cow. And even your goats and sheep are different in their gut. A horse eats stuff and he travels around and he spreads the seeds. So horses actually help to keep a healthy range out there. Spot had to come sit back up on my lap. Uh, so I had a book written in 2012 that was about a Mustang that I had named Romeo, and it was called Mustang Seeds. And the reason was because the horses, whether they get on the fetlocks of the horses while they're walking through, they help germinate the range. So they are not decimating the range. Just like bringing the wolves back to Yellowstone brought back healthy water areas because no longer did animals stay at the water areas. So they came and got their water and they left. When animals stay and live at a water basin, they eat all the plants that are there and they change the water uh, land that's around it. So your wild horses don't stay at water because water areas can have wolves and mountain lions. Other animals drink water. So the wild horse travels on the average 25 to 50 miles a day that he will go grazing. He will go get water. He'll go out grazing again. Horses graze about 18 hours a day. So majority of their time is grazing. A horse has his eyes on the side of his head, like your prey. They're called prey animals. So your rabbit, your sheep, your cow, animals like that. And the way they see is they see independently on their left and independently on their right. When they put their head down to eat, if they move around like this with their head, they see 360 around them. And that's a prey animal. A predator, like humans, are considered predators. Wolf, owls, any animal that has its eyes in the center of the face, we see 180, like that. We see out of our peripheral in front of us. So we look at stuff, we hunt it, and we go get it. A horse and a deer, their first instinct is to run from trouble. And then they'll turn and look and see if the trouble's following them. Did they really need to run or do they need to keep running? And I mean, I know people know deer. You'll see that with deer. Horses are the same way. They're going to run and then they're going to turn around and they're going to look. And so, anyhow, that's the difference between horses and humans. So
No,
it's
that's
amazing.
really interesting because I love this kind of stuff, learning about I love learning about animals, all sorts of animals, horses. I want to come out to the farm too and check it out. I told you I drove by one day, but I didn't know if you were there, so I didn't. But I am so interested in all of this and everything you do, and I wanna see how the when you have exchange students and other students over there. I want to be a part of that too. It's incredible that we have all these avenues for kids to learn important stuff, but we keep them cooped up in the classroom. And we have all sorts of avenues where kids can become more open-minded and understand. Because we're in a time now where so much is changing a- at a rapid pace. Like you said, I mean, from where we started, I can't even imagine when we talk about Wyoming and that particular challenge we're having with clearing those areas, how they're going to expedite clearing those areas. And I'm not getting political when I say that, but there's going to
Mhm.
be an understanding that, oh, we've just taken too long to get this job done, and let's just move it along. And I'm just trying to say, let's stop all that random thinking and let's get down to really constructive thinking. And
Yes, absolutely. And I actually have a new volunteer company that we signed on with, like what is it, 24, 23? I think October 23, we signed up with a new company from South Korea, because Korea is new to the volunteering around the world. They had not been big into volunteering. And even though I've had some Koreans and Chinese people come here, but usually they've been students, and they would come here for Christmas holiday because they weren't going to go all the way back home, and they need it. The dorms are closed down, they need somewhere to go. So we have a young lady coming for 2 weeks and a day in May, and she'll be from South Korea. So it's really interesting to see people from all over the world. All people want to give and care and make a difference. And we need to get that, our majority of people, just like what you're saying. There are a handful of people that are running ways that we do stuff. That needs to change. We have got to change a different way because it's not working. It is not working with the amount of suicide, drug use, the amount of young people that are killing themselves due to drugs and suicide is unbelievable amounts. We have got to do a change to save society, save animals, save this planet.
so that just that point alone, when you think of young people, 15, 16-year-olds committing suicide, and we don't, sometimes the numbers are not published even, and we would never know if we've reversed those numbers by getting these kids out to your farm and by doing more stuff like that. We don't know that. But if we did, I think that we would see a significant difference in these kids' lives, and they're wanting to do more with their lives than do drugs and turn to crime and alcohol.
Yes.
So I definitely this has been incredible, Diane. This has been an incredible in chat. Diane Delano at Wild Horse Rescue in Webster, Florida. How do we get to your? So I know you always need funding. How do we contribute to your organization? You want to put that out there?
Well, I mean, hay fund. Matter of fact, my worker, he came over to me for a second. I'll get with him. He's going to go pick up our hay. We go through a ton of hay. He's driving up to Larson's. We buy it from a wholesale place because you got to make your money stretch. So we drive up to Wildwood, which is, I don't know, 35 minutes north of me, and we buy our hay bi-weekly. So that's going to be about $2,500 worth of hay. So I go through about $7,000 a month on hay and feed here.
Wow.
A lot
And
of
now that
money.
you're walking, I see how beautiful that farm is. That's just
Yeah.
incredible.
So this is over here is some of my horses in here. Let's see if I can show you. See, these are some Mustangs,
Oh yeah.
and this is how our pens are set up. You can see that these are really tall fences. See, this is really a tall
Wow.
fence. And then we have our holding pen in here, and this is where some Mustangs. This one's in. He's on some medication. He had the acupuncture, and he's on some herbs. So he's in a pen. So we make sure he eats his herbs. This little Mustang right here has post traumatic stress disorder. The poor little girl has been handled really badly. And a lot of people
Wow, she's
want to
beautiful.
say a lot of people don't necessarily go, oh, I'm going to hurt this animal. But by what they do, they cause great emotional distress on them. So Splash, isn't he handsome? He's an Oregon Mustang. He's
He's
15 years
beautiful.
old. Hello, handsome. And so we're set up in here where we have this is where pens where we can have the horses, and we just have two donkeys in right now. And then there's our little cute little pony. Hi there. That is Crystal. We have wind chimes. I have some of them tied because it was
Oh,
really
nice.
windy, but we have wind chimes, and we have a bunch of Mustangs out there in the field. There's Emma coming. She's room service. She's coming with the wheelbarrow. She's been cleaning. And then go and look out this way. Yes, thank you, hon. I'll shut the gate. You have Mustangs out here, and right now, see all this dirt. We had to build this up when the hurricane. See, I'm still wet out there. When the hurricane came, we had water all the way up into there. This was all underwater that I'm standing on. So we've been moving dirt around. And this is Apache who's come in here. He's a Nevada Mustang. He used to be so afraid. And over there, you've got Gambler and Osti mock battling, which is good. You know, these horses get a social life out here. They do get adopted or they end up staying here in, you know, whenever their right home will come. Over there, you see Bella. She's going to lay down and get some nice sunshine on her. It feels good. The weather is beautiful today.
See, this is so beautiful just to see all this. This is my vision for America, how we should have all this everywhere instead of just I don't know. I mean, granted there's gentrification and granted everybody needs a home, but this is just incredible to see all this and live like this and wow, look at these guys playing.
I know we had 15 puppies come in last year, three litters in 1 week. And these are two remnants of it. They both were returned because when you adopt, the dogs can come back. And Gracie, the one that's standing up, Emma, ended up adopting. Emma is a failure foster person. She adopts. She's wonderful. She has three of my dogs. She has four of my horses. She has three of my goats, a lizard, and so anyhow, this other little dog that is Marty, she's available for adoption. Marty, she's only 10 months old, and she's only about a year old. They're both young
They're
pups.
adorable.
And there's Apache. Hi,
There's
Apache.
Apache.
Yeah, you coming to say hello? Are you coming to say hi?
Wow, she's
This is my
beautiful.
day. Even when I'm, I have a lot on my plate to take care of. We have a lot of animals. I have a lot of things that I have to be responsible for. But the fact that I get to be with these animals every day, it really helps you emotionally to be
Yeah.
give thanks every day for to be an animal caretaker and love doing what I do. And that's something that also, when we talk about the kids in school, children that have gifts, they should nurture those gifts and help those kids find that path in life. I loved horses since I have pictures of me at like 2 and 3 years old with horse toys and dressed like a cowgirl. And then I've been riding since the age of 3. I have loved horses my entire life. And I have owned horses my entire life. And I've owned them through uh, getting married, divorce, having children, going to college, job changes. I've always maintained keeping my horses. And that has helped me to keep my path going forward in what I was really doing. It really shows you your commitment in who you are in life. And I'm glad that I had to go through struggles. If people don't think you have to walk through fire in life, sometimes you do. Life is not about everything easily given to you. I have walked through the fire. I've had hard times, hard struggles. It's not an easy struggle today, but I've come to the other side and I'm making it work. And
It's
that's
incredible what you've done. Just looking at all this construction you've done on the farm. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. All these fences took time. It's incredible. Rebuilding that, getting that out of the flood zone and covering it back up with dirt. This is just incredible what you've done. You've been there 30 something years, right?
what now?
You've been there over 30 years now, right?
No, 5.
You've been there
I
5?
I bought this place in 5 years ago in 19. I came from Mims. I bought my first place in 93 to have horses at my first center. And then I sold, well, I still own that property actually. It's 2 acres over in Mims. And then I bought another place in 2014 that was 34 acres. And then I bought this place. I sold that place and bought this in 19. So all this change that you see here wasn't here. Okay, the barn was here. This barn was built in 2000, but it didn't have that bridge. It didn't have that closed in room. It didn't have the feed wall. It didn't have the tack room. It didn't have the
Wow.
fences. It didn't have the buildings. It didn't have, matter of fact, those windows are from my old mobile home on my first property. I had those
That's
windows.
incredible.
That's back to my dad's roots to reuse. This is our tack room, our saddles.
It is
We have.
just an So this has been a project, even though you've been in this property for 5 years. This has been an ongoing project for since '93 at least.
Oh, absolutely. I have in the education building over here pictures that my Aunt Ann painted for me in 98. And that was of my dream center of Mustang Educational Training Center was going to be my name. I was going to be Mustang Exec. But in 2000, when everybody was able to get a computer, actually, when you Googled Mustang, you got a car. So in 2007, I became a nonprofit and I just made it simple. Wild Horse Rescue Center. Okay, let's just keep it simple, man.
Like, share, subscribe, comment. Thank you so much.